Okay, we're starting the 7th chapter in Hilchos Tshuva. Ho Rishus Kol Odom Nesuna Lo Kmo Shebiarnu. Since it's within man's purview or his availability to go whatever direction he chooses, man is in a position to choose his path of life. Path of life means to do something positive and negative. Yishtadolam lasas tshuva ulisvados bifiv. It's very interesting. We're saying now a person is in a position, and it's called free choice, that a person is not inclined to one direction more than the other. There's no external force drawing in either direction, and it's based on one's initiative. Since nobody's perfect, King Solomon says, there's no perfect tzaddik. But since we have the ability to override our inclinations, how should we maximize on that? Yishtadil odom lasas tshuva. You should take the initiative and do tshuva. Because we're not perfect, we always try to do better. Ulesvados befiv mechatov, and to make a verbal confession. V'ligor linor kapov mechatov, and to cleanse your hands, to shake your hands off from the sins. K'dei sheyomus ubal tshuva. So when you die, you should leave this existence as a repentant. V'yiskel chaylam habo, and you should merit the world to come. Give you an example. You know, in life, there's expirations. And you come to a certain point, you reach a certain point, the opportunity is not there any longer. I always give the example that a child has a free scholarship to go through to college. However, he has to fill out certain documents. He has to meet the registrar and has to show up just to introduce himself. And it's 6 months before registration. And they say, if you're not there by that time, you forfeit the scholarship. The parents say to the son, did you take care? He says, I have another 6 months to go. He's only 2 weeks before the deadline. Parents say, did you go? He says, I have 2 weeks. 24 hours before. I have for 24 hours. And he says, okay, I'll go. On the way to see for the appointment, the car breaks down and he doesn't make it to the deadline. And he forfeits the scholarship. What did he do? And this was the only opportunity in his life that he could make something of himself. He lost out. If he would have listened to his parents all along, 6 months in advance, with all the mishaps that could have happened, you would have made it to the deadline to enroll, and you would have your whole life before you. But because he procrastinated and he delayed and he showed up late, and at the late moment, a mishap happened, he missed the boat. That's what life's all about. Life is opportunity. Every moment we have opportunity. There's never a moment we're perfect. There's never a moment where we should be, and there's always upgrading. But since a human being has that ability to make that determination, and what you're going to, what you're not going to be, not whether you're going to be a nuclear physicist or you're going to be a doctor, that's not up to you. That's predestined. But in terms of your status as in the positive column, negative column, that's up to every one of us. If that's the case, to guarantee you in the positive column, even though we're prone to slip up, we're prone to that. I'm using a term that Bob used yesterday, slip up. People slip, right? Especially now with this weather, you appreciate what it means to slip. You slip and you could fall and get hurt. But as a human being, you can pick yourself up and continue going. That's called tshuva. So since the human being has the ability to make a difference in his life, where should you put that initiative? Do tshuva, verbal confession, before it's too late. So before you leave this world, you cleanse yourself of all the sins, and you guarantee to share in the world to come. Because the objective of this life is to arrive there. As it says in Pirkei Avos, this world is only a corridor. It's a corridor to arrive in that great banquet hall. Life, 70 years, 80 years, 90 years. We're on the trajectory to arrive there. What happens if somehow the booster rockets, they somehow fail? You have to get other ones to get you over the hump. We're always going over the hump. And you have to realize it's a hump. It's not easy. But if you succeed and you make this success, then you have an appreciation of what you accomplished. And the more you realize how much you could accomplish, the more you appreciate what your ability is. That's the reality of life. You know, it's interesting when I speak to you, I speak to myself. Because as we say, every one of us, I couldn't care where we're at. We know we could do better. Every one of us, as good as well as we're doing, we could do better. So the question is, why are we doing better? And if you could do better, you're not doing better, there's a claim against you, why aren't you doing better? So you have to do tshuva for not doing better. It says there's no tzaddik who is perfect, because every tzaddik could do better. Even he didn't sin. The not doing better is a claim. So as a result of that, we always have to keep upgrading and keep doing tshuva. Why weren't we where we should have been? There are moments we could have invested in something valuable and we passed on it. Why did we pass on it? Why were we distracted? You shouldn't have been distracted. Could you imagine if a person is in the battlefront and he gets distracted, and because he gets distracted, a number of his fellow soldiers are injured or killed? Because of that distraction, look what happened. The person, if he has a conscience, he has difficulty living with himself. He faults himself for that. You have to have that focus continuously. You have, as they say, you have to be up on your game. Continuously, you have to be up on your game. You can't slack it for a moment. Because if you realize you're in the battlefront, there's no time out. You got to, so as the Mesilas Yesharim writes, life is a four front battlefront. Wherever we turn, we're being confronted with challenges. The evil inclination is continuously distracting us, deceiving us, convincing us other than where we should be. There's an inertia. You know, we just want to be left alone. We want some time out. Haven't we done enough? All these words are words that resonate in every one of our heads. God, give me a break. Give me a break. I've done enough. Like you work for a company and they pay you a $5 million salary per week. And the boss comes and says, you know, why did you come late? What do you want, a pound of flesh? Pound of flesh? I'm paying you $5 million a week. That's a pound. That's you ask you to come on time, ask you for a pound of flesh. God gives us our whole existence. We have health, we have mental health, we have physical health, we have energy, we have everything. Yeah, but the question is, why can't I go out to the beach? Why can't I go surfing? Why can't it? You know, I didn't give you your life that you go surfing. That's your choice. You have a choice. You could expend your life in that, but that's not what it's meant. That's not why I endowed you with this ability to go surfing, or to go mountain climbing, or to do whatever else you're doing. Or current events, not politics, current events. What just happened in Syria? You had a regime that was cruel, inhumane, the way they treated their citizenry, murdered 500,000 people, men, women, and children, chemicals. They gassed them, they poisoned them. They incarcerated people in literally subhuman conditions. He had literally a stranglehold on these people, and they had secret police. People were afraid to open their mouths. And in 2 weeks, the whole empire collapsed. It's unheard of. How does this happen? And how? They were attacked with nuclear, with jets, a ragtag rebel band on motorcycles, on pickup trucks, overthrew the regime. Within weeks, it was like unheard of. It was like the world was shocked. How do you go from that level of power, and in moments it's like you never existed? It just crumbled to nothing. How does this happen? How do we understand it? And they say the whole Middle East is going to fall like dominoes. Eventually, all these regimes are going to collapse. And Iran's going to collapse. They're all going to collapse. Why now? What's happening in the world, the whole perception of what's decent, what's decency, what's not decency. How long has things happened recently that also the whole purview of the world is changing? You know, a man is a man, a woman's a woman. All of a sudden, people are starting to see things as they should have seen them 6 months ago, 4 months ago, 3 months ago. Why? What's happening? There's a certain clarity coming to the world. Why is this happening? 3 months ago, we could never believe what's happening today. The Middle East, value system, the moral and ethics of the world. What's happening? You know what's happening? God is working behind the scenes, causing these things, these changes take place. Ultimately, when Mashiach will come, that transitions take place like a blink of an eye. Everything's just going to fall apart. All the opposition to God's presence is going to fall to the wayside. And the Jews will be appreciated for what we are. And it said, God will be declared as the one omnipotent being. Nothing else exists outside of him. How's it going to happen? It's unfathomable. You got billion Hindus and who knows what in India. You have the Chinese, billions of people. All these people, in a minute, all these regimes are going to fall and collapse, and they're going to come to recognize monotheism. How's it possible? What happened recently is a semblance of what we're talking about. A semblance. It's a little bit of an eye-opener. What was not to be believed is happening. Just to orient us that these things happen and could happen and will happen. And because it's not too far into the future, God is already giving us that orientation to give us, to acclimate ourselves, to prepare ourselves for that moment. Historical. The Gulf of Aqaba was blocked. Israel was actually in a vise. Hundreds of millions of Arabs surrounded them. They blocked the Gulf of Aqaba, and they came to the United States. And the Russians were in Syria. They were in the Middle East. And the United States says to Israel, we can't take a chance of causing a third world war to start with Russia. Can't. It was the Cold War. We can't do it. You guys are all by yourselves. And we were abandoned. We were abandoned by the world. There was a rally in Washington, D.C. in June 1967, beginning of June, where 300,000 Jews came to Washington, D.C. And I was one of those 300,000. I was 19 years old at the time, maybe just turning 20. And we showed up. There were hundreds and hundreds of buses from all over the country came. Again, and speakers, government people, and they were speaking about Israel's state of God forbid, could be annihilated, to try to convince the American government to intervene, to not allow this to happen. And they were already digging mass graves in Tel Aviv, because God forbid, if we would have been attacked, it would have been over. We had no idea what's going to be. And what happened? One day we went to sleep. Next day we wake up, we hear the Arabs reporting of what's going. Israel's been attacked. The Egyptian Air Force, this Air Force, that Air Force, 20,000 casualties. They're burying them in these mass graves in Tel Aviv, so on. It was disastrous. But of course, it was all false. It was all propaganda. What happened was, in 3 days, they destroyed all the Arab air forces. They destroyed all the tank corps. In 6 days, the war was over. There was a handful of, there was less than 600 casualties in that war. That thousands and thousands of POLs, prisoners of war, walking in their underwear with the heads over the heads, having handcuffs. That's where they were. It was a miracle. That miracle rattled the world you can't imagine. Israel was put on a pedestal. The level of jubilation is not to be believed. There were pictures that went to the Western Wall, which they were denied since 48. And they had Goren, who's the chief rabbi of the army. He went on the Temple Mount, blew the shofar, and the soldiers, even secular, they were crying at the Western Wall. The reunification of Yerushalayim, the old city, first time they went in, was unbelievable. I believe what's happening today is even more than then. How quickly things are changing on a global level, then did not change. What happened there was very limited. Israel became the victor, so to say. We're not talking about victor now. We're talking about how the enemies are just falling by themselves, unrelated to Israel. God is taking that one after another down. Jews are leaving Europe in the droves, moving to Israel because of the level of anti-Semitism in Europe. We speak about the ingathering of the exiles at the end of time. Who ever heard of such a thing? France. There's certain countries have become so anti-Semitic, Jews can't live there, and they're forced to leave. Who ever heard of Canada being anti-Semitic? What goes on in Montreal? Bombings of Jewish institutions. Whoever heard in the civilized world? Yeah, years ago in Ireland, you heard about these things. But in Canada, and this Trudeau, a man like that is a prime minister. The guy was a drama teacher in high school. He's voted in to be that. Could you imagine? And he's making decisions. And then France embargo. They're going to have an arms embargo on Israel. We are the victims, but they have an embargo because we're committing genocide. Everything's backwards. And all of a sudden, things are changing now. The world is starting to see things differently. And Netanyahu wasn't intimidated by Biden. Biden says, don't go, he went. Don't go into Rafah. Don't go into where the Hamas are. He went and destroyed them. If he would have listened, God forbid, who knows where we'd be today. So he's a hero. Netanyahu, as much as you don't like him politically, whatever, it doesn't make a difference. But he's being castigated and criticized, and they want to bury him, whatever, it doesn't make a difference. But that's all happening now. Why? Because God wants it to happen. This is the salvation of God will happen like a blink of an eye. We read this week's Parsha. Yosef was rotting in a dungeon for 12 years. All of a sudden, Paro hears that he has the ability to interpret dreams. Instantaneously, he rises to power. And the commentators explain this is foretelling the future. Whenever something has to happen at a certain level, it's instantaneous. We were driven out of Egypt to the point the dough didn't have time to turn the leaven. That's why we have matzah. Suddenly, Hashem will appear. And this is going to happen. And we're nearing that moment. And world events now are foretelling that's going to happen. We're getting a semblance of a glimpse of what that reality. Understanding that each person's destiny is spiritual, is in his own hands. Take advantage. We know we're not perfect. We know we could do better. We know we've made mistakes. And there's always that mechanism, which is called tshuva, we can make corrections. Let us be smart. Things don't change overnight. But let's start the process to beginning to upgrade. And in small increments, just make slight corrections, a little bit at a time. We're not saying you should become a tzaddik overnight. But whatever you did, you spoke Lashon Hara, speak less. You eat not kosher, eat less. Shabbat, violated to a lesson. Everything just slightly less. But every little bit less has infinite value. Because you're upgrading on something in an area which cannot be quantified. That's my advice to everyone. That's what the Rambam is saying. And when you do tshuva, have the remorse, verbalize it. Distance yourself from sin. do less sinful behavior. And going in that direction, then you'll be in a good place at that special time.